Greetings, good morning, good afternoon, and evening, everyone. I want to extend a warm welcome to all of you, wherever you are, joining from around the world. Thank you for making time to hear from our honorable guests and speakers about the incredible role that peatlands play in supporting biodiversity, conservation, and in turn, human health and well-being. Our session today is entitled Peatlands as a Super Nature-Based Solutions to Climate Change and a Refuge for Unique and Threatened Biodiversity. And this session builds upon the Global Peatlands Initiative Partnership, which is coordinated by UNEP, and it consists of more than 35 partners in 4 tropical peatland countries of Indonesia, Peru, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the Republic of Congo. The initiative aims to promote the conservation, restoration, and sustainable management of peatlands globally as part of the International Climate Initiative supported by Germany's Federal Ministry of Environment, Nature Conservation, and Nuclear Safety. The session is structured around a journey across multiple continents, highlighting the role of peatlands, their status, and their future through a variety of case studies and experiences. The emphasis of this session builds on the important work which has been presented in UNEP's Wild for Life campaign and also forms an important input into the recently launched UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration, of which we are so excited about. We hope you'll enjoy hearing hands-on experience from the incredible presenters today. If you have any questions, I want to encourage you to post them in the chat, and our team will be monitoring these in English, Spanish, and French to compile them for response at the end of the speaker session during our question and answer session. I'd like also to share that there's real-time translation services that are available for the session through the Interactio app. It can be accessed via the GLF website for this session. Please do not hesitate to reach out to the GLF team for any technical issues that you have. And it's now my distinct pleasure to welcome our incredible and distinguished speakers, who I'll introduce as we go through this special peatlands journey together. The first session is on global peatlands health and planetary health are connected. And it's a great honor to present the Minister of Tourism and Environment from the Republic of Congo, who will be speaking on peatlands and biodiversity in Central Africa and for the globe. Minister Sedan Noura, you have the floor.
Merci Suzanne pour ces mots gentils en introduction. Monsieur le vice-ministre de l'Indonésie, Mesdames et Messieurs les représentants de l'ONU Environnement, Mesdames et Messieurs les représentants des partenaires techniques et financiers, distingués participants, Mesdames et Messieurs. Je tiens tout d'abord à remercier les organisateurs de cet événement pour avoir bien voulu m'associer en ma qualité de ministre du Tourisme et de l'Environnement en charge des questions de développement durable de la République du Congo. Le thème du présent forum, qui porte sur les tourbières, nous interpelle à plus d'un titre à l'heure où les solutions basées sur la nature ont été identifiées comme un moyen efficace pour lutter contre les changements climatiques dans la perspective de l'atteinte des objectifs de l'accord de Paris sur le climat. Comme vous le savez, les tourbières de la cuvette centrale du bassin du Congo ont été mises en évidence grâce aux travaux de recherche du professeur Simon Davis de l'Université de Leeds, dont les résultats ont été publiés dans la revue Nature en 2017. Ces recherches ont révélé l'existence dans la cuvette centrale du bassin du Congo de tourbières s'étendant à ce jour sur 145 500 km² et qui séquestrent près de 30 milliards de tonnes de carbone. Ce chiffre représente environ 3 ans d'émissions de CO2 de toute la planète. La découverte des tourbières au cœur du bassin du Congo, deuxième poumon écologique de la planète après l'Amazonie, place la République du Congo, mon pays, devant un double défi, celui de participer activement à la préservation des 228 millions d'hectares de forêt du bassin, mais également à la gestion durable de cette véritable bombe à retardement que représentent ces tourbières. Parce que ne l'oublions pas, les tourbières, c'est 200% de la biomasse des forêts. Il apparaît en effet aujourd'hui évident que nous pouvons sérieusement compromettre l'atteinte des objectifs de l'accord de Paris sur le climat, cet énorme puits de carbone, si cet énorme puits de carbone n'est pas géré de manière durable. La République du Congo a pris très tôt la mesure de cette responsabilité historique et s'est lancée dans plusieurs initiatives pour une gestion durable de cet écosystème particulier et fragile qui abrite une biodiversité riche et variée. Mesdames et messieurs, c'est le lieu ici de rappeler la tenue à Brazzaville en mars 2018 de la 3e réunion des partenaires de l'initiative mondiale sur les tourbières, à l'issue de laquelle a été signée la déclaration de Brazzaville entre la République du Congo, la République démocratique du Congo et l'Indonésie pour une gestion durable des tourbières. Nous avons aussi conclu en 2019 un mémorandum d'entente avec l'Indonésie dans l'objectif du renforcement de la coopération sud-sud pour un échange d'expériences et de bonnes pratiques dans la gestion durable des tourbières tropicales. Enfin, un cadre institutionnel pour la gestion des tourbières est en cours de préparation au niveau national et la problématique des tourbières a été prise en compte dans la lettre d'intention qui a été signée entre notre pays et l'Initiative pour les forêts d'Afrique centrale, le CAFI. Actuellement, 2 projets importants sont en cours de préparation, notamment le Fonds mondial pour l'environnement. Il s'agit notamment avec le Fonds mondial pour l'environnement. Il s'agit là de la conservation intégrée des écosystèmes de tourbières à base communautaire et promotion de l'écotourisme et de la protection de la biodiversité, du carbone et des réserves d'eau dans les tourbières du bassin du Congo, avec l'appui du fonds allemand IKI. Il s'est également de noter que le professeur Simon Davis et ses équipes ont lancé en 2019 la 2e phase du projet Congo Pit 2. À ce stade, ces recherches ont permis de relever que les tourbières de la République du Congo sont irriguées grâce aux eaux des pluies, contrairement à celles de la République démocratique du Congo, qui sont irriguées par les cours d'eau. Cette découverte implique, pour la République du Congo, mon pays, l'impérieuse nécessité de lutter efficacement contre la déforestation dans la zone des tourbières au risque de les assécher et de préserver la biodiversité unique dont elles regorgent. Donc, il nous faut, vous l'avez compris, impérativement trouver une économie alternative pour les populations riveraines, les communautés qui y vivent. Parce que nos tourbières, à la différence avec celles de la RDC, sont irriguées, restent humides dans ces zones Ramsar à cause de la pluviométrie. Si nous coupons les arbres, eh ben, il ne pleuvra plus, pour dire tout simplement les choses. Mesdames et messieurs, la lutte contre les changements climatiques est un combat mondial qui ne se gagnera pas sans une gestion durable des tourbières, leur préservation faisant partie intégrante des solutions basées sur la nature. C'est pourquoi nous avons convenu avec le Fonds vert pour le climat, le Fonds mondial pour l'environnement et le Fonds bleu pour le bassin du Congo, de syndiquer, de fusionner ces fonds pour gérer durablement nos tourbières. Cette annonce sera faite solennellement à l'occasion du One Planet Summit qui se tiendra le 11 janvier 2021 à Marseille, si les conditions le permettent, parce que nous sommes en pleine pandémie encore que nous gérons sur le plan de la COVID-19 en France et ailleurs dans le monde. Donc, si cela ne se fait pas en présentiel, cela se fera par visioconférence. Mais là, nous annoncerons donc solennellement que ces trois fonds vont syndiquer. Plus que jamais, nous avons donc besoin de l'appui de tous pour gérer durablement les tourbières qui sont aujourd'hui un bien commun de l'humanité. J'insiste, c'est un bien commun de l'humanité, c'est une bombe à retardement. Et donc, la catastrophe que pourrait engendrer leur destruction aurait pour la planète tout entière des conséquences incalculables. Votre solidarité nous est donc indispensable. Voilà à peu près le message que j'aurais voulu, que j'ai délivré à l'endroit de tous, qu'il nous faut donc préserver urgemment cette bombe à retardement qui sont donc ces tourbières de la cuvette centrale que nous partageons donc avec la République démocratique du Congo. Je vous remercie pour votre aimable attention.
Thank you so much, Minister. It took a bit of time for the translation to catch up with your rich statement and your strong message of importance about.
I'm knowing.
Well, tremendous message. Thank you very much, Minister.
Thank you. And now I'm good now. Okay, and thank you. And
Beautiful.
thank you for everybody. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going now. I'm sorry. I'm going now, and I'm saying thank you in health. All body is here, and I'm saying thank you for this possibility to change with all people who has here now. Thank you.
Extraordinary. Our appreciation. The next speaker is the Executive Secretary of the Convention on the Conservation of Migratory Species and Wild Animals. Executive Secretary Amy Frankel will be speaking on the global connectivity, why peatlands here matter there. Thank you, Amy.
Okay. Thank you so much, Susan, and to all who've organized this very excellent event. We're very pleased from the Convention on Migratory Species to join. So let me try to turn my slides on. We're all getting used to how to do this. Let's see. Okay, so Susan, can you just confirm that you can see the slides and you can hear me?
I can hear you well, and we're waiting for the slides to come up.
Okay, I've shared the screen. try one more time.
I can see you and the beautiful background. I think here we have it. There it is. Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Good. Okay, here we go. The title of our presentation and the title of this entire session is very pertinent to the work that we're doing at the Convention on Migratory Species. And as you can see from our title, it's about the connectivity. What is the role of peatlands, not only in one place, but thousands of miles away for the livelihoods, the survival of migratory species and the habitats and the people around them. So first, let me do one slide on what is the CMS. Our full name is actually the Convention on the Conservation of Migratory Species of Wild Animals. And there's a few important words in there, including migratory. For us, migratory doesn't necessarily mean animals that go thousands of miles away, although we have some that do, but it can also be, as you'll see in a moment, animals that routinely cross a border. And the basis for our work is international cooperation between two or more countries for the conservation of shared migratory species, a shared range of those species and their habitats. So that lays the foundation for our work. Now, I want to just also introduce this concept of connectivity. So connectivity is a concept that we've had quite a few experts, including there's an expert group of the IUCN with hundreds, I think it's over 800 members that worked with us, as well as parties and NGOs and other partners of the CMS over last year to better define what we're talking about here. So we came up with this working definition that was endorsed, in fact, by our Conference of the Parties this year at our 13th Conference of the Parties meeting in India. You'll see on the screen, the working definition describes the unimpeded movement of species, as well as the flow of natural processes that sustain life on Earth. So this includes not just the movement of species, but also, for example, the movement of the water systems that are needed to support them. Now, connectivity is absolutely essential for the survival of migratory species, but it's also quite relevant to other mandates, to other priorities. For example, the UN Convention on to Combat Desertification strongly supports and is a partner with us in bringing forward this idea that we need to look at connected ecosystems, and I'll explain what that means in a moment. But the third bullet here is very important. It embodies not only the natural patterns and the life cycles of migratory species, it also is a very helpful concept and provides a roadmap for action in mixed use areas. And by that, I mean areas that are not pristine. They could be areas of human use, farming, or other uses, but yet they provide a very important, say, stopover site for migratory species. And third, it's a very important concept for the foundation for countries to work together to say, we need to share our commitment to address this ecosystem and these species that are connected between our countries. So I'm going to show one slide, which is, sort of the bad news that I'm sure you're all familiar with. And this is some of the key findings of the report last year from IPBES, the Global Assessment on Biodiversity. And one of the headline points that came out of that report is the first point here, that 1 million species are facing extinction. Now, about half of those are insects. It's very important to note, but the other half are non-insect species, including migratory species, some migratory species. So species are at risk. We're also losing we've already lost a lot of our land surface, altered the oceans, impacting our oceans, and also 85% of wetlands have been lost. So we're not heading in the right direction with these statistics. Importantly, the IPBES report found that area-based measures like protected areas have accomplished some successes for example, there's a lot more area that's protected, but that they don't protect, first of all, the right diversity of ecosystems, and second of all, they have not addressed this issue of connectivity adequately. So now let me move to peatlands. And I am not a peatlands expert. You have plenty of those who will be speaking today, but I want to point out the connection with migratory species, which is the very diverse range of peatlands are also important for supporting a diversity of migratory species. And they do it in several different ways. So I'll give you a few examples. First, if we take some species, their primary habitat is actually in peatlands. So peat swamp forests such as gorillas, chimpanzees, the forest African elephant, as well as the jaguar, which in fact was just listed on CMS, our appendices, which means that it needs protection under the CMS at our recent COP. The jaguar is a great example of connectivity because its original range was from Argentina all the way up to the southern United States. And so now we're really working with the countries where the range exists to try, and partners to restore and protect the connectivity for that species. Now, peat swamp forests are becoming increasingly fragmented. And so we're doing a lot of work on the species that you see, as well as others that really depend for their core habitat on peatlands. There's also another type of migratory species that relies on peatlands, might rely on them just for part of the year, part of their seasonal migration. And these, of course, are commonly some of the bird species that are protected under the convention. But just to give you two examples here, the Siberian crane, and they're a little different in terms of what's happening. So the Siberian crane, you see the two historical ranges, one on the west and then more in East Asia. Really the only viable population left is on the east. Now here they rely on peatlands for their breeding grounds, but in the case of this species, it's not the breeding grounds so much as the non-breeding areas, which are to the south, like along the Yangtze River Basin, that is under threat because of changing habitat. But they are an example species that need peatlands to survive, but the threats are coming from elsewhere. A different example is with the aquatic warbler, and you can see its historical range, which was broadly across Europe. It's now pretty much extinct or not viable in Western Europe. It's only in those areas you see the dark dots where it can be found in viable numbers. And there the issue is in fact destruction of the peatland ecosystems where it lives, where it depends for breeding. I have just one more slide that I wanted to put up because this is obviously a topic of the day. And actually, before I get to this, basically CMS, there's a lot of information to share, but the species I just showed you, what we do is work with those countries and with partners such as UNEP through the Peatlands Partnership to try to address both the species, the threats to species, as well as to their habitats. So for the species I showed you, we have either an agreement in the form of a binding agreement or an MOU with specific conservation actions that need to be taken. And there are some successes, which is the positive news. Now back to this slide, migratory species and zoonoses. As you might know, the future infectious diseases that affect human beings, more and more are coming actually from animals, from wild animals or domestic species that have been in close proximity to wild species. And there's a risk, increasing risk of a spillover of pathogens. As many as 75% of future infectious diseases are predicted to come from animals. What's interesting is that the causes, the top risks of a spillover have been identified as two things. One is consumptive use of wild species, and we see pictures of the markets and trade. It's not just, it's not all trade, it's not all uses, but there's linkage that the more exposure and use of wild species, there's higher risk from some activities. The second is habitat loss and fragmentation, so that the closer the human activities and humans get to species, the more likelihood that there'll be a spillover. What's interesting is the third bullet, which is that the same activities from humans also cause the greatest risk to migratory species. So maintaining healthy, well-connected ecosystems is important not only for migratory species, but it's also important for human health. It's a really strong indicator of our connectedness, and bringing it back to peatlands, why we need to pay attention to peatlands, to their restoration, to their conservation for migratory species and their habitats. So my last slide, to remember, stay connected. And here's how you can find out more by reaching out to us through our website. We're on Facebook and we're on Twitter. So thanks again for the invitation, and I look forward to the other presentations.
Thank you so much, Executive Secretary. It's phenomenal to hear some positive examples, some good news from CMS, as well as a reminder about the importance of the connectivity for so many species at different times in their life cycle. We will segue from your conversation about the reminders about the importance of these habitats in terms of thinking about health to our next speaker, Vice Minister for Environment and Forests of the Government of Indonesia. We'll be talking about building back better in a post-COVID world. Vice Minister Nuhong, you have the floor.
Thank you, Susan. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. So thank you for giving me opportunity to share my presentation here. Secondly, allow me to use my PowerPoint presentation. The title of my presentation is Peatlands for Building Back Better in a Post-COVID World. So as all of you know, Indonesia is one of the country with the largest peatland in the world. In terms of globally, we are in the fourth position of the largest peatland after Canada, Russia, and US. And in terms of tropical, our spatial extent of our peatland is in the first place, where we have around 15 million hectares of peatland in Indonesia. And all of us already recognize the important roles of tropical peatland in particular. First of all, to protecting biodiversity and protecting environments and controlling climate change, supporting in particular community livelihood. And in terms of biodiversity, for example, Indonesian peatlands, constituted as a home for endemics and various endemics and specific biodiversity, both fauna and flora, like tiger, orangutan, any kind of endemic species, gibbons, and also specific peatland plants and so on. There's very various numbers of biodiversity in our peatland. And also peatland in Indonesia support livelihood for the local community. And also, source for food, non-timber forest product, water supply, and flood control, fire risk control, any kind of education, socio-economics services that provided by peatland, including sometimes culture and religious activities. And yeah, all of us know that a peatland is like a specific ecosystem that's very important in terms of mitigating in particular climate change, because peatlands store substantial or carbon organic matters that very important to control climate change. About 30 up to 40% of global soil carbon actually storing into the peatland areas. And one particular characteristic of peatland is because it's water. I mean, hydrological. 90% of peatland actually water, apart from this very important organic matters. But this specific and unique ecosystem actually quite vulnerable against human or anthropogenic activities. For example, like conversion to other activities, drainage of peatlands, fires, and so on. Some of these kind of activities actually not really benign on peatland ecosystem. So we need to address or to control this in sustainable or wise way in order to avoid the peatland from being degraded. In Indonesia, in order to avoid this further degradation, government of Indonesia, in particular the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, already put in place numbers of regulation in order to control it. For example, how to protect peatland with a number of regulation, how to protect, to maintain the water level in the peatland and so on, and how to conserve peatland. For example, in our regulation, we allocated that peatland deeper than 3 meters, for example, has to be protected. And part of the peatland hydrological unit in the new regulation, about 30% of it has to be conserved for conservation or protection of hydrological and so on. And also in terms of peatland management, we have a certain criteria and indicator in terms of water table, a level. For example, in the cultivation, we not allow to have water table lower than 40 centimeters from the feet surface, for example. And there are many others regulation that were part of the corrective action that we try to improve our peatland management in the future. And just a couple of examples, for example, measures, corrective measures that we have been implemented in Indonesia. For example, we already put in place like a moratorium of new concession peatland. And we also have a policy if certain or any peatland concession fire happen in that concession, for example, we have to revoke it, and after that we have to do a restoration on it. And substantial government effort now also to do a restoration of degraded peatland, while in the meantime we conserve the pristine and healthy peatland in order to support livelihood. So very important in Indonesia. We not just protect or conserve peatland for protection of biodiversity and others, but also very important to support communities' livelihood that living in and surrounding peatland ecosystem. And fire management also one of the very important strategic measures that already implemented in Indonesia, in terms of prevention, fire suppression, improving human resources capacity and equipment, as well as we strengthen partnership with with local communities and establish like a community-based fire prevention measure. And currently we are developing, we call it a permanent solution to this peatland fires in Indonesia through serial economics or livelihood intervention for communities in the peatland areas. How Indonesian commitment to building back better in relation with this COVID-19, yeah. The Indonesian government really committed to work together with multi-stakeholders in effort to recover health, economic, and social problem that caused by this COVID-19 pandemic. And at the moment, we have two big program. We call it extraordinary program nationally. First is we call it a national health recovery program, and the second one is a national economic recovery program. So we do it these two big extraordinary program in order to address, the impact of this COVID-19 pandemic to the health and also economic, but also in terms of environments. So our commitment for building back better, for example, we continuously our effort to implement sustainable peatland management by promoting sustainable peatland ecosystem management in order to keep this pristine and healthy peatland ecosystem, and including in this case to do this kind of restoration of degraded peatland. And second commitment is to about law enforcement and governance. Currently, we tightly effort to improve our forest law enforcement and governance, including to put effective measure to stop this kind of illegal logging and wildlife trade. And the third commitment is to improve investment in the forest related works in order to preventing deforestation and forest degradation, and also increase forest area through investment related work, part of the stimulus, we call it, for stimulus packet for economic recovery. For example, we put a substantial investment currently to help communities with, we call it, social forestry groups, of social forestry farmer groups, in order to improve their economic activities. And the last commitment is we call it post-COVID-19 recovery program. We undertake post-COVID recovery program to improve livelihood as well as build a resilient to forest dependent communities. So a new strategies have been implemented in response to COVID-19 pandemic to support forest farmers, for example. One is through the Bank Pesona. Bank Pesona is like an abbreviation of Pengembangan Perhutanan Sosial Nasional or National Social Forestry Development. So through this program, we provide incentive to the social forestry group if they implement, we call it, learning outcome in their business plan by selecting cluster for forest and food commodities that can be used to provide production inputs such as seed, fertilizers, and pesticide. And second is a national economic recovery. At the moment, government of Indonesia through Ministry of Environment and Forestry, we provide like around 200 million rupiah, or around more than 13,000 US dollar to each social forestry business group, with the aim to achieve, food security through developing agroforestry and providing productive economic tools. And third strategy is local wisdom. We provide education to social forestry farmer with focus on strengthening local wisdom with innovation and technology in food production and intensification. So thanks good with this kind of COVID also, because we actually change, like shifting from previous face-to-face learning system into the virtual learning system at the moment. It's quite effective. Yeah. And this part of the fourth strategy. So we use mostly right now communication, education, training with e-learning system, we call it, e-learning system, where we encourage farmers to think not ecological centrically, but also eco-centrically by simultaneously, conveying both productive waste and ecological views, so farmer can adapt the current condition. And this is my last slide. Actually, community empowerment program in conservation areas. So apart from the production and utilization areas, we also introduce some, we call it community empowerment program within conservation area. For example, we develop, conservation village, where a community group that receive already capacity in order to manage conservation area, and we provide them as a partners, in order to develop conservation activities. And second program is to give access to them to utilize, non-timber forest product collection, for example, or traditional cultivation, traditional hunting, or utilization of water resources, and also ecotourism activities. And the last one is partnership facilitation. We also provide them with what we call it financial capital, marketing, infrastructure, governance, as well as the use of technology. So I think that my presentation, and many thanks for your kind attention. Back to you, Shara.
Thank you very much, Vice Minister. Fantastic to take us from the global perspective to a chance to really focus on some of the wonderful things that Indonesia is doing in Asia, and begin to think about human health and the COVID building back better. To continue this conversation, we'll go to Hans Schulten, who is the Peatlands lead for Wetlands International. He's going to speak to us about restoring Russian peatlands, both the challenges and the opportunities. Hans, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, community around me, and thank you also the established speakers just in front of me. I've learned a lot, and I'm humbled to be in this excellent set of speakers. What I'd like to do is to bring you down to and take that journey as to Russia. To Russia in 2010, the summer of 2010. In front of you, you see the red square covered in gray smog, acrid smoke, clouds of smoke envelop everything. What happened there is that as a resultant of that, and I'm trying, 50,000 excess deaths were recorded in the Moscow region in 2020. But why was this happening? What was going on? This was caused by degraded peatlands around the Moscow area in Russia that caught fire. The smoke of that drifted towards Moscow, created respiratory illnesses, enhanced and exacerbated respiratory illnesses, and caused the problems that I just spoke about and the resulting in excess deaths. So there is a direct link here between the health and the quality of the peatlands and the health and the quality of people. And yes, we're sitting at this moment in time in the middle of a pandemic that is enveloping is globally, but we also need to make sure that we look at the other pandemics or the other situations that are happening around the globe as well. So taking you from Moscow and the peatlands, let's go on now on a much more positive note, because I am positive and Wetlands International is there to drive change in this world. So out of these the situations, we work together with the federal ministry and in Germany and through a whole series of partners, and started developing a project called Restoring Peatlands in Russia for Fire Prevention and Climate Change Mitigation. And that's been happening from 2011. And what I will show is that it will go on. We've just been given the go ahead and just started implementing phase 3 of that. We don't do this alone. We do this with a whole series of partners, including the financiers sitting behind there, but also delivery partners on the ground, including those in Russia and including in Germany. So we are the center in this, the spill to make sure this is all happening. So why Russia and why are we focusing there? As you can see on the slide that you just see in front of you, peatlands are widely distributed around Russia and the Russian Federation. Not only the shallow peats, but also the deeper peats. It's massively extensive, and it's the highest area, one of the highest areas. So if we then look into detail and what's actually going on, then the degraded peatlands that were getting dry and caught the fire and caused these human health issues are very focused and centered in the west of the Russian Federation and in some particular counties or some particular provinces. As a fact, the Russian Federation is the second largest global emitter of greenhouse gas emissions from degraded peatlands, according to the global peatland database run by Greifswald Meyer Center. And later on, we'll hear back from Greifswald Meyer Center in one of the presenters later on after me. So 10 million hectares of peatlands have been drained and used for agriculture. Out of those, 4.5 million for forestry, peat extraction, and for agriculture. So these peatlands were degraded and caught fire. So the project was around how can we restore them? What can we do to change that and not only improve the ecology, the ecological restoration, but also reduce the greenhouse gas emissions associated with these degraded peatlands, with these dry peatlands, and also at the same time reduce the human health aspects, the fire risk reduction. So we first started off with two phases, phase 1 and phase 2, whereby the project developed solutions, not only on the green, the ecological restoration, the yellow on the climate smart rewetting, and the red on the fire risk reduction. We're talking about, these are hectares running up to 94,000 hectares in the total of the fire risk reduction, 64,000 hectares for climate smart rewetting, and 21,000 hectares for ecological restoration. But we've just been given the go-ahead and been awarded a phase 3 in there, whereby we'll be extending this up until 2024 and restoring another 140,000 hectares for fire risk reduction. And you can see the numbers here for the climate smart rewetting and ecological restoration. So out of a bad thing, out of fires and out of direct action and out of support, we created a restoration not only from ecology, but also reduced climate emissions and greenhouse gas emissions and a reduced fire risk. So how did we do that? There's a series of ways, and as I will show you. First of all, the rewetting, and you will see here that the rewetting was predominantly done by blocking drainage ditches so that the water table gets higher and then the peatland will recover over time. What we also measured in there and is the greenhouse gas emissions, because it's not only reducing the direct impact on human health, but also the indirect impacts on human health through our changing climate. So as a resultant of the first two phases, we're reducing the amount of emissions that are reduced by about 168,000 to 242,000 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per annum. We've measured that, and we're in the process, and we're in the last phase. We're also working together with the Russian ministry to include this and make this part of their NDC contributions. So it is peatland rewetting, it's monitoring and greenhouse gas emissions. So how did we do that? And I think that's very important, because science is not the only way on how you do this. Science is important, and understanding how peatlands work is important. But as a recipe for success, it's really important that we get local buy-in in the delivery and we build capacity on the ground. A project can deliver for 2, 3, 4, maybe 10 years if we're lucky. But the only way on how we get long-term change and long-term success if we get buy-in from the local community and build capacity on the ground. So we create a long-lasting success. What is also very important that we found out, and especially in this, is high-level buy-in and to celebrate the success. The initial agreement on this was signed by high-level buy-in. As you can see, the ministers signing it on the top left graph, but also celebrating success and showcasing that these are really positive changes and that we can learn from each other and just share the experience. For example, the project got the UN Momentum for Change Climate Solution Award in 2017 at the COP23 conference. So, just to wrap this up, a bad thing happened. Yeah, we saw peatlands degrading, and we knew these peatlands were degrading. At the same time, we knew that there was a solution there was a solution there possible. So out of this bad thing, we created and turned that around in a good situation, whereby now the peatlands are being stored, the biodiversity is being stored, carbon is being kept in the ground and being actively sequestered, and we see that the human health aspects are much improved. The only way on how we can do that is bringing technical expertise together with stakeholder engagement and government commitment, so we can really change landscapes for the better. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Hans. How fantastic to end with a positive story. I know there's so much need for those clear-cut examples of where an investment had a true impact, and we can really show how this can work in other places. So moving from these speakers to a European perspective, our next speaker is Tina Coffey, who is an award-winning nature photographer and the author of Tapestry of Light, Ireland's Bogs and Wetlands as Never Seen Before. She'll be speaking on peatlands through the lens of diversity and history in a miniature. Tina, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Susan. It's wonderful to be here, and I'm in great company. I am in Ireland, so hello from Ireland, wherever you are. My name is Tina Coffey, and I'm an Irish nature photographer. Just a little bit about myself. Having worked for years in the industrial and fashion photography industry, in 2000, I was immersed into the world of nature photography in Botswana in Southern Africa. And for 9 years, I lived there, and I was photographing the flora and fauna and wildlife while working as a documentary photographer on flamingo migrations and in the safari industry. And this is a crocodile eye from one of the biggest wetlands in the world, that's the Okavango Delta. So when I returned to Ireland in 2009, I felt very lost. I missed the wilderness and I missed the wild places. And in 2011, I went for a walk in my local bog with botanist and geologist John Feehan. And he gave each of us a magnifying glass, and he revealed to us the flora and fauna that we would easily pass by unseen. So this experience really opened my eyes to this incredible and ancient wilderness right on my doorstep. So I've been exploring these wondrous bogs through the seasons with my macro lens, which allows me to capture this ancient wilderness in its minuteness, seeing beyond what the human eye is capable of. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the bog, through the eye of my macro lens, and just to give you a taster of what is hidden out there. So this is what I call nature's eye. This is frog spawn, and it's the first sign of life in the spring. So the sun was shining and it lit a reed below the surface of the frog spawn, illuminating one cell. And as I looked through the macro lens, it appeared like an eye was staring straight back at me. So like the eye of Mother Nature herself. And this is sphagnum moss. Now, sphagnum moss, as you all are aware of, is the most extensive plant on the bog. In fact, they created our bogs. They're an amazing species that can hold 20 times their own weight in water. There are many species of them, and they come in all shapes and sizes and color. So I call this one sphagnum bouquet. And this is the marsh marigold. And the marsh marigold is the first flower to appear in the spring, and it lets us know that the bog is waking up. So this flower supplies much needed nectar for emerging insects. And this is an emerging spore from its mossy bed. So the macro lens really is a wonderful tool that allows me to capture miniature otherworldly scenes like this that coexist with us. And these are hairy shieldbugs. They're mating hairy shieldbugs, and they are on the iconic bog cotton plant. You can tell why they might be called shield bugs with their wonderful armored backs. And this is the dark tussock moth caterpillar feasting on bog cotton. I was fascinated by his little feet as he moved up the stalk of the plant. So as I do for most of my photography, I am on the ground, I'm lying face down taking these photographs and getting very wet in the process. But this is my perspective of this little guy. And this is bog asphodel. So the arrival of bog asphodel indicates that summer has arrived. It's a very beautiful flower, and it completely transforms to a deep orange when it's in its fruiting form in the autumn. And this is for me, the most iconic plant on the bog. It's the round-leaved sundew, and it has adapted to survive in the sterile conditions on the bog. It's a deadly carnivore, very innocent looking, but it's a deadly carnivore. Insects are attracted to its sweet, sticky tentacles, and once they land on it, they're doomed. The tentacles close over the insect and it is digested, and the sundew receives the nitrogen it needs. And this, for all arachnophobes, you can turn away now, but this is the raft spider. And it's here in Ireland, this is our largest spider, our truly most impressive spider as well. He's a wonderful hunter. They don't spin webs to capture their prey. They're semi-aquatic, hunting on the water and under the water and on the solid ground as well. They are truly amazing to photograph. And this really is a success story. This is peatlands really are a haven for our biodiversity. This is the marsh fritillary, and it's a wonderful butterfly that has made a remarkable recovery after an absence of almost 20 years. And that really is thanks to the conservation efforts here in Ireland, especially by the likes of the Living Bog Project. And this otherworldly scene are pixie cup lichen. To me, they look so mystical in the morning sun. I imagined that possibly they were enchanted goblets belonging to otherworldly kings and queens. And this is the devil's matchsticks. It's another beautiful lichen with its scarlet tips. To me, this looked like a miniature tree in a frosty peatland landscape. And the bogs and the peatlands, you really don't expect to find such wonders as these. This is a marsh helleborine orchid. The peatlands host many species of orchid, this being my favorite, a spectacular orchid that can be found in the summertime. And in the autumn, the heather comes into bloom and the bog is really transformed into a sea of purple. And it's really a wonderful time of the year to come to the bog. What also comes into bloom is the devil's bit scabious, this beautiful purple flower. And it's wonderful for insects in this late season. This birch shieldbug is making the most of this wonderful flower, and it's heavily covered in morning dew and appears to be almost encrusted with ruby jewels as it fed on the flower. And this is bracken fern, which turns from green to deep orange and gold in the autumn, and recedes in a blaze of glory as the evening sun illuminates it. And this is frozen sphagnum moss. As I explored the bog one day in midwinter, a tiny sphagnum moss caught my eye as the sun lit up the ice in a shallow bog pool. And I must say, when I looked through the macro lens, I really couldn't believe my eyes. The frozen sphagnum was perfectly preserved in the ice, as if suspended in animation, surrounded by a galaxy of tiny frozen bubbles. And this is my book, Tapestry of Light, that was released in 2017. Unfortunately, it's sold out now, but I am working my way towards a second book. The purpose of my photography is to raise awareness, to reveal what treasures we have, and to inspire the viewer to conserve it. And in our quest for conservation and awareness, really, photography is a wonderful asset. It's a powerful tool as it's a universal language. And I really hope you've enjoyed my presentation. These are all my contact details and all of my social media outlets. So thank you again. The honor is totally mine to be here among such wonderful speakers. And I wish everyone well and looking forward to the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Tina. Just extraordinary images, and you brought us all closer, closer to the extraordinary diversity and these beautiful species that are there, that so many of us could never really have a chance to glimpse in that way. I would love to imagine you there, on your belly in the wet forest, taking these photos. Just amazing.
Thank you very much.
Our next speaker will talk about the plight of the aquatic warbler and the importance of peatlands in wildlife health. This is Franziska Tenenberg, who's the director of the Grieswaldmeier Center. Franziska, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I will take you now along our journey to a very small bird. It has been mentioned before in Amy's talk, and this bird is actually connecting now the two continents, Europe and Africa. So we'll move along our journey towards Africa. And I'm representing the Greifswald-Meyer Center and also the BirdLife International Aquatic Warbler Conservation Team. You can also put it differently. This is a story about peatlands, about people, and about a little brown bird connecting these people. And all these people you can see on the slide in 2007 in Senegal, they are, for example, connected by this bird. So what is about this bird? What is so special about it? This little brown bird is very small. It weighs only 12 grams. It's a passerine bird. It sings very nicely, but very little people can actually hear it. It breeds in fen peatlands in Europe, and it winters in West Africa. So it is a long-distance migrant, and it connects the two continents. The aquatic warbler also has an unusual breeding system with promiscuity. The broods are fathered by several fathers usually, and they have uniparental care by the female. And there are a lot of special adaptations also to the special habitat they live in. The aquatic warbler was once widespread and numerous. In Europe, it was once here in Germany called the sparrow of the Meyers, widespread as a very common sparrow. Today, the species is globally threatened, and the entire world population is estimated to be around 11,000 singing males, the counting unit of this bird, because you can only detect the singing males, and a similar amount of females, hopefully. This map now shows you the breeding sites here in Europe. You see countries like Poland, Belarus, and Ukraine. These countries harbor still a lot of peatlands. And the yellow tiny little parts of this map, they are actually the breeding habitats of this bird. There were also habitats in Lithuania, in Germany, and in Hungary, but it is a very, very restricted breeding range nowadays. So the sites are very limited and scattered. This map now shows you a bit closer look to two key countries, Germany and Poland. The dark parts of this map are the peatlands of our countries. So we have a lot of peatlands, for example, in North Germany and also more in North Poland. You see a bit of the Baltic Sea. And then the green parts of this map are the breeding sites of the aquatic warbler after the year 2000. So the recent breeding sites we still have. The other colored spots indicate breeding records from the past. And you can see, so we have quite a good historical knowledge of the distribution of this species. You can see that there were aquatic warblers present in the Netherlands, for example, in all around northern Germany. And now they have retreated to the east. Why are they retreating to the east? There's another historical map I would like to share with you. This is from the European Meyers book, a large group of European peatland scientists prepared in 2017. Here you can see peatland areas in Europe and a year or a period indicated next to it. And this is connected to the direction how the knowledge of peatland drainage was actually spread in Europe. It started largely in the Netherlands, in countries where they had found out how to build polders, how to drain peatlands. And then this knowledge spread along the 12th, 13th century, for example, to Poland, where such land areas were drained in the 16th, 17th century, and further east to Ukraine up to the 19th century. So there is a connection between the distribution of peatland drainage knowledge and the decrease of this bird species. The aquatic warbler is not only a species for itself, it is also a flagship for the breeding sites for fen peatlands. Here in the breeding sites, you can see other bird species like the corncrake, the great common snipe, the butterfly, the larger copper, but also very beautiful plant species like bog myrtle and bog bean. And this is similar in the wintering sites in West Africa. Also here, birds like the winged cistico, the Bayon's crake, the gray-headed kingfisher or blue throats, they can be found in these habitats. So what do we need to do to protect this peatland bird? A key issue is networking, knowledge sharing, exchange between all the countries where the bird is flying along and breeding and wintering. And there's a very active aquatic warbler conservation team under BirdLife International. And the European Union and other funders have funded large projects where also this networking was part of. Then there's also a convention on the conservation of migratory species or wild animals, the CMS Memorandum of Understanding. This is the only such memorandum of understanding for such a little brown bird. It was concluded in Minsk in Belarus, one of the key breeding range countries, in 2003. And this MOU helps substantially to bring the people together who are dealing with this bird, are caring for its protection along the flyway. It is also very important to improve knowledge. As you can imagine, it is a small bird. It's hiding in the wetland vegetation. It's not so easy to spot, and it's migrating over long distances. There are still knowledge gaps about migration and wintering, and satellite tracking is not possible for such a small bird. You can do it with white storks and increasingly smaller birds, but for such a small bird with 12 grams, it's still not feasible. But there are geolocators that actually record the light, and then you can also reconstruct the flyway. And this is such kind of research is being done since 2012. And a key issue is habitat restoration. We need to restore the aquatic warbler's habitat. We need to shift from, on the left-hand side, the drain peatlands to wet, green peatlands, healthy peatlands. And a rewetted peatland would then look like this, for example. We also need to maintain the habitats of the aquatic warbler. In nutrient-rich environments now, mowing is needed to actually keep a vegetation structure suitable for it. And you need mowing machinery for this. You need support to farmers. And if you have restored a habitat, it can be necessary to actually reintroduce the species by translocation of aquatic warblers from one breeding site to a potential breeding site that has been restored. And this is being done by an EU LIFE project led by Baltic Environment Forum since 2017. And you can see on the pictures how the birds were actually brought to cages and then fed with local food, how community involvement worked. And there's a lot of very good information on this on their website. And what I can also tell you, and it was really open also to us as scientists, these translocated birds, they flew to Africa and they have returned to the restored habitats in Lithuania. This is really a success story. Species do not go extinct alone. They represent an ecosystem. And in case of the aquatic warbler, a peatland ecosystem, a threatened ecosystem. And we should protect it for us and for future generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You provided a bridge to Africa for us. So now we can hear more about peatlands as reservoirs for wildlife populations and human health in Africa. It's a pleasure to introduce a lecturer from Marianne Ngoubi University in Brazzaville. Lecturer Etho Suspense will be speaking on peatlands as a refuge for rare and endangered species. Professor Suspense, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you so much. Just time to share the screen. Just tell me if you have my screen too, please. Bonjour, juste savoir, est-ce que mon écran est visible?
Oui, nous pouvons voir votre écran. Merci. Peut-être le mettre en mode présentation.
OK, c'est bon?
Oui, c'est bon.
Je dois bouger l'écran pour la vidéo. OK. Voilà. Merci beaucoup pour cette opportunité que vous nous donnez de faire cette présentation qui a pour titre les tourbières comme refuge de biodiversité pour les espèces rares et menacées. Je voudrais aussi dire merci à l'UNEP pour l'invitation qui a été adressée à moi et puis à l'équipe Congopit pour préparer cette présentation. Alors tout de suite, je voudrais dire que la tourbière qui aujourd'hui est rendue célèbre a été mise en valeur par un article, sinon un article qui a été publié en 2017 dans la revue Nature. Et la ministre Arlette Soudan-Nono a largement fait part des résultats de cette publication de 2017. Et ici, je voudrais juste dire que cette publication part de longues années de recherche des données qui avaient été collectées sur le terrain dans la zone Nord Congo, notamment par une collaboration entre l'équipe conduite par le professeur Simon Lewis, mais aussi des chercheurs de l'université Marien-Wabi. Alors, ces nombreuses années de recherche ont abouti à la publication, on va dire, de cette carte que vous voyez bien, qui aujourd'hui est devenue célèbre. Cette carte qui présente l'étendue de la tourbière qui s'étend sur 145 000 km². Et tout au long des recherches, nous nous sommes aperçus que cette zone humide était riche en biodiversité, tant sur le plan floristique que sur le plan faunique. Il faut aussi dire que lorsqu'on a fait la datation de la tourbière, sinon de la tourbe, les résultats ont donné que cette tourbe était très vieille et âgée d'environ 11 000 années, ce qui montre à suffisance que nous avons ici affaire à un écosystème mature, très stable, et donc il y a de fortes chances que les différentes espèces que nous allons vous présenter ici sont pour la plupart des espèces inféodées, des espèces locales. Alors pour ce qui est de la biodiversité floristique, les différents inventaires qui ont été réalisés par les différentes équipes de Congo Tourbière nous ont révélé qu'il y avait des espèces caractéristiques de la zone de tourbière. Et ici, nous vous présentons ici des espèces comme Wapaka paludosa, Carapa procera, qui sont des espèces indicatrices. Mais il faut aussi reconnaître, sinon avouer, qu'il y a encore plusieurs espèces encore indéterminées et les prochains travaux permettront de pouvoir apporter des réponses. En dehors donc des tourbières forestières, nous avons aussi des tourbières qui se sont développées dans des forêts marécageuses qui sont très riches en raffia laurentii et d'autres tourbes qui ont été découvertes dans des forêts marécageuses développées par des espèces raffia okeri. En dehors des espèces ligneuses, nous avons aussi des espèces non ligneuses, comme ici, nous vous présentons dans cette photographie des photos qui ont été prises dans la zone de tourbière et qui représentent ici des champignons. Et nous en sommes convaincus pour la raison écologique que j'ai avancée précédemment, que parmi ces champignons, nous avons des espèces encore non déterminées, non découvertes. Pour ce qui est de la biodiversité faunique, nous nous sommes appuyés sur les travaux de recherche qui ont été menés par un de nos collègues ici à l'université Marien-Wabi, notamment le professeur Victor Mamonekene, qui a fait quelques travaux de recherche dans la zone nord de la Likwala et notamment dans la zone de la tourbière. Et il s'est avéré qu'il y avait des espèces de poissons qui étaient caractéristiques de cet écosystème-là. Et à l'image ici, en image plutôt, vous avez quelques photos qu'il m'a communiquées pour montrer les espèces qui étaient présentes dans cette zone de la tourbière. En dehors de cela, nous vous présentons aussi quelques photos des araignées qui ont été prises, des photos prises dans la zone de tourbière. Il faut dire ici on a besoin des spécialistes, on va dire, dans ce domaine-là, pour venir et nous aider à déterminer si ce sont des espèces nouvelles ou des espèces déjà découvertes. Mais sinon, qu'en allant sur le terrain, il y a beaucoup d'araignées, beaucoup de papillons, comme nous sommes en train de vous montrer là. Il y a aussi, au niveau de la mégafaune, 14 espèces menacées au niveau mondial, mais aussi 10 espèces prioritaires au niveau national. Et parmi ces espèces animales qui appartiennent donc à cette catégorie de la mégafaune, nous avons des éléphants de forêt, nous avons aussi des bonobos, nous avons des chimpanzés, nous avons des céphalophes. Ici, vous avez des céphalophes à dos jaune, mais aussi des céphalophes à bande transversale qui sont rencontrés régulièrement dans cette zone de terre humide, mais beaucoup plus associée à la zone de la tourbière. Nous avons aussi rencontré dans cette zone de la tourbière des crocodiles, et ici, il y a le crocodile nain présenté par cette photo, le crocodile nain, mais aussi nous avons des panthères. La meilleure de l'histoire, c'est quoi? C'est que toutes ces espèces ne causent pas la peur des différentes espèces, plutôt de différents chercheurs qui vont sur le terrain. En dehors de ces espèces que je viens de vous présenter.
Thank you so much, Ifo. We hope that that we captured the majority of your presentation. We lost you there at the end. But a phenomenal overview from the microscopic to the megafauna. From Africa, we'd like to go to South America. And one thing that we have to share is a video from Christine McDevitt Thompson, who is the president of the Tompkins Conservation and the UN patron of protected areas. And so we'll turn it over to the video as we transition to talking about South America, peatlands, collaborating and innovating for conservation of planetary health.
Hey everybody, I'm Chris Tompkins, president of Tompkins Conservation and the UN patron for protected areas. Back in the early 90s, my husband Doug and I decided we wanted to commit ourselves to joining in and restoring a healthy planet with big, wild, and connected landscapes where all life can flourish. With our teams and the partnership of the governments of Chile and Argentina, we protected over 14.5 million acres through the creation of 15 new national parks. And about 15 years ago, we realized that we have to stop and ask who's missing. And we began to work in what we call rewilding, bringing back species that had gone extinct wherever we were working. We hope to fully restore ecosystems before we call our work done. All my life I've been drawn to really harsh environments and those with diverse forms of life and vast and wild landscapes. Argentina's Peninsula Mitre is exactly one of those places with 3,000 square kilometers of land and 2,000 square kilometers of coastal ocean. And it's at the very tip of South America. It's one of those magical places. Here there are broad mountains, broad valleys, beach forests, lakes, rivers, and linked throughout by peatlands. These extraordinary ecosystems are proving to be crucial for the health of the planet. In seeking to protect Peninsula Mitre, we have joined local grassroots organizations in a 17-year campaign to safeguard the tip of the Americas. Historically, this was the land of the Haush, a culture of hunter-gatherers driven extinct by European colonization. Not an uncommon story. But there are hundreds of archaeological sites dot the landscape still in Peninsula Mitre. The peninsula also has a unique marine ecosystem. Here, where the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans meet up with the Antarctic currents, they create a rich feeding ground for abundant marine mammals such as sea lions, orcas, humpback whales, as well as seabirds and the occasional Andean condor. You can also find endangered species, such as the striated caracara and the southern river otter. They're all there, but in low and fragile numbers. So here's the key point about Peninsula Mitre. It has a vast peatlands that are largely intact. Peatlands represent 45% of the peninsula area, the largest extension of undisturbed peat in South America. Peat makes up the planet's largest terrestrial carbon, but not all varieties offer the same degree of carbon capture. What's special about Mitre are the cushion-type bogs of Astelia pumila. Remember that name. The dominant species of Peninsula Mitre, this variety absorbs over 4 times the amount of carbon as any other type of peat. In total, these peatlands store 315 million metric tons of carbon, which is the equivalent to 3 years of emissions in Argentina. When you think about it, their contribution is so massive that they merit immediate and permanent protection. Obtaining protected status is key to ensuring that this remote place will help mitigate climate change long into the future. Argentina's most important carbon capture point, Peninsula Mitre, is home to nearly 84% of the country's peatlands. As ecosystems, they are both fragile and they're irreplaceable. These peatlands started forming 18,000 years ago and grow only 0.5 millimeter per year. That's what's at stake. You take them out, it's not likely they'll come back. Global peatlands currently capture 1/3 of the world's carbon found in soil, and double that quantity stored in plant biomass. That's how efficient they are. They also help the environment adapt to climate change. By regulating water flow, they retain water during floods and providing it in periods of drought. It's like a perfect system. A recent New York Times article pointed to a study published in Environmental Research Letters that determined that peat bogs could help us achieve our world climate goals. At this very moment, the legislature of Argentina is debating a law that would define, inventory, and protect wetlands around the country. Argentina will be leading in this. It's time for natural climate solutions to join mainstream policy. We may start by protecting the places we know and love, but it's time that we defend the wild places and become vocal advocates for peatlands. The future of all life depends on it. Thank you very much.
So powerful. Really puts it in context when you think about it as representing the equivalent of 3 years of national emissions in Argentina. Really, really powerful video. Staying in South America, our next speaker as the Vice Minister for Strategic Development of Natural Resources from the government of Peru. Vice Minister Gabriel Quirandro Acosta will be speaking on designing policy interventions for peatland conservation in the case of Peru. Vice Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Susan. If you allow me to put my video. Oh, okay, my video is there. Can you see me now? Oh, okay.
Yes, very well.
I can see me now. So I will share my screen. Excuse me. Share screen. This one. Please let me know when you see it. Is it there?
Yes, perfectly. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's my second Global Landscape Forum in an event by GPI, and I'm very thankful that you consider Peru to be one of the good examples to show on your work. Now, if you allow me, I will shift to Spanish for my presentation. Muchas gracias nuevamente por la invitación, y vamos a hacer una presentación sobre el tema de las turberas en el Perú, cómo estamos viendo el tema de la gestión y la conservación y la gestión de los peatlands, de las turberas en el Perú, como mecanismos para asegurar el cumplimiento de metas vinculadas a cambio climático y a diversidad biológica. Como ustedes sabrán, y lo hemos visto durante el evento, las turberas están distribuidas a lo largo de todo el mundo. Tenemos turberas en climas templados o en climas incluso muy fríos, y tenemos esta zona tropical, si se quiere, en el centro del mundo, en el cual hay una concentración muy grande de turberas. En el caso peruano tenemos alrededor entre 5 medidas en el año 2002 y 7,5 más o menos medidas en el año 2019. ¿Por qué cambia esto? O sea, ¿por qué cambia esta extensión de turberas existentes? Porque hay mucha información que todavía no está cotejada o no está oficializada. Lo vamos a ver cuando entremos en un detalle un poquito más adelante sobre la extensión, la posible extensión de las turberas en el Perú, y ahí vemos, por ejemplo, que podríamos tener incluso muchos más que estas 7,5, ¿no? Pero la idea aquí es que son un ecosistema sumamente importante y que, por tanto, son objeto de una serie de compromisos internacionales vinculados a decisiones de UNEA, a decisiones de la Convención de Ramsar, a decisiones de la Convención de Diversidad Biológica, que, reconociendo la importancia de las turberas, asignan una serie de responsabilidades a los estados parte para asegurar su conservación y su uso sostenible en el largo plazo. Y aquí regresamos a esta discusión que decía yo sobre el tema de qué tan grande es, de qué tamaño es la extensión de las turberas en el Perú. Y si vemos aquí, lo que podemos ver es esto que está marcado aquí en color verde, ¿no? Estos números que están marcados en color verde son aquellos tipos de ecosistemas en los que sabemos a ciencia cierta que existe una capa de turberas debajo del agua, debajo del componente de humedal, pero si uno ve todos estos otros tipos de ecosistemas que están aquí, estos pantanos, los bosques de llanuras, estos ecosistemas que además, si uno los ve en el mapa, están distribuidos tanto en la zona tropical del bosque amazónico como en la zona altoandina, en la zona alta de los Andes, como en nuestra zona costera. Nuestra extensión de turberas podría llegar a ser de 3 veces más grande, ¿no? Podría llegar a cubrir 17 millones de hectáreas en el país, pero para eso necesitamos pues hacer mucha investigación para poder determinar a ciencia cierta que hay un contenido de turba, de peat, en estos tipos de ecosistemas. Pero vemos pues que hay ahí un proceso en marcha, ¿no? Un proceso en camino de generación de información para mejorar la toma de decisiones. Como señalaba, nosotros somos un país en el cual tenemos turberas distribuidas en las 3 grandes bioregiones que tenemos en el país. Tenemos turberas en la zona de costa frente al Pacífico, ¿no? Donde tenemos concentración de turberas sobre todo en humedales costeros y en manglares. De hecho, en el Perú tenemos el manglar más austral que existe sobre la costa del Pacífico en todo el mundo. Tenemos también turberas que son las que están aquí al lado izquierdo de la presentación, en la zona altoandina. Son turberas más de tipo herbáceo, ¿no? Con formaciones que son muy importantes en la regulación del ciclo hídrico, por ejemplo, en esta zona andina, y que tienen un juego muy cercano con la dinámica de los glaciares y la escorrentía que producen esos glaciares todos los años. Y tenemos también nuestra mayor extensión, los peatlands, ¿no? O las turberas tropicales, que son las que ocurren en el ámbito de nuestro bosque amazónico y que incluyen sobre todo lo que se llaman los pantanos de palmeras, que son los que tienen la mayor extensión, más también turberas en zonas de bosques inundables estacionalmente. Y aquí podemos ver, o sea, estas zonas de turberas son zonas de concentración muy grande de diversidad biológica. Vemos, por ejemplo, el lago Junín en nuestra zona andina con una función o una contribución de la naturaleza muy importante en términos de lugar de parada y de alimentación, por ejemplo, para especies migratorias como los flamencos. Tenemos las turberas o la Reserva Nacional Pacaya-Samiria como una fuente muy grande de alimento, de proteína para alimentación humana. Tenemos también todo lo que está vinculado a los manglares en la costa, con especies de fauna muy importantes como el cocodrilo de Tumbes, incluso representado aquí en esta moneda conmemorativa que hemos sacado en los últimos años aquí en el Perú. ¿Cuáles son los beneficios que las turberas ofrecen a la población y en qué medida nosotros reconocemos que a los ecosistemas como bienes públicos a nivel nacional? Entonces, bienes factibles de recibir inversión pública y de recibir inversión privada. Proveen bienes y servicios claves para la gente, especialmente para comunidades que hacen utilización de sus recursos en la zona andina, en la zona costera, en la zona amazónica. Son una parte fundamental en la generación de la identidad y de la cultura de estas poblaciones locales. Mantienen una serie de servicios ecosistémicos que son sumamente importantes, y lo vamos a ver después, no solo a nivel local, sino a nivel nacional e incluso a nivel global. Y además, y esto es algo que ha quedado muy claro en términos de la situación actual que estamos viviendo con la COVID-19, son un lugar muy importante para mantener agua de calidad suficiente y para asegurar cierto nivel de inmunización frente a zoonosis y frente a pandemias que pudieran existir hacia el futuro. Otro de estos servicios ecosistémicos es el tema del almacenamiento de carbono. Nuestras turberas almacenan solamente las que están en la cuenca del Pastaza-Marañón, que son una de nuestras zonas de turberas en el ámbito amazónico, 60 años de emisiones concentradas de todo el país, solamente a nivel de esta extensión de cerca de 3 millones, de 5 millones de hectáreas que tenemos en este lugar. Y eso que la medición que se ha hecho en este caso solamente incluye las raíces y la cobertura de hojas por encima del suelo. No hemos medido turba, por ejemplo, y lo que uno ve, por ejemplo, en este gráfico es que esa capacidad de almacenar carbono podría ser aún mucho más grande, ¿no? Y nuevamente necesitamos poder profundizar mucho en el tema de investigación, y ahí hay una política pública que está siendo promovida muy fuertemente respecto a poder determinar este servicio ecosistémico que brindan las turberas. Por ejemplo, existe un vínculo extremadamente fuerte entre las turberas andinas y la cultura local. O sea, el desarrollo de la civilización en los Andes es un desarrollo alrededor de una gestión adecuada de los recursos hídricos. Recordemos que en el caso del Perú se genera este corte entre los Andes más tropicales y más húmedos que ocurren entre Ecuador, Colombia y Venezuela, y los Andes más secos que empiezan en Perú y siguen hacia Chile y Argentina. Entonces, el factor de gestión del recurso hídrico y por tanto los humedales y las turberas que son una parte fundamental en la regulación del ciclo hídrico son, como digo, parte fundamental, una base, un building block del desarrollo cultural andino, ¿no? Que es tan reconocido a nivel mundial respecto del Perú, respecto a los países andinos. Y en el ámbito amazónico, los aguajales, que son esta especie dominante, la Mauritia flexuosa, su nombre científico, en estos pantanos de palmeras, también ha sido un determinante en la conformación de la identidad cultural amazónica local, siendo un lugar de abastecimiento de fruto, de generación de toda una serie de contribuciones de la naturaleza que son sumamente importantes para el mantenimiento de estas poblaciones locales. Pero las turberas un poco también, o sea, están en riesgo, porque hay proyectos de desarrollo, porque hay ideas, un poco tiene que ver eso con la poca información, o la relativa poca información que se maneja respecto de su importancia, sobre qué tanto riesgo implica transformar las turberas o destruirlas, ¿no? Por ejemplo, aquí estamos mostrando el ejemplo de una carretera que es propuesta por un gobierno regional para conectar el ámbito amazónico con la zona costera del Perú, y que lo que vemos es que si esta carretera propuesta se construye, podría implicar que tengamos dificultad para cumplir con nuestros compromisos de las NDCs. El cálculo que hemos hecho aquí, por ejemplo, es que no construir la carretera podría permitirnos un cumplimiento de alrededor del 15% de nuestra NDC vinculada a reducir las emisiones asociadas a LULUCF, ¿no? A pérdida de bosques y deforestación. Entonces, de ese nivel de importancia estamos hablando en términos de la conservación y del mantenimiento de estos tipos de ecosistemas, ¿no? O sea, esa capacidad de influir o de generar cambios grandes en términos del cumplimiento de metas internacionales estamos. Y frente a esas amenazas, nosotros estamos promoviendo un nuevo modelo de negocios, o sea, un nuevo modelo de intervención. ¿Cómo promovemos la utilización sostenible de las turberas tal como son? O sea, manteniéndolas húmedas, o sea, aprovechando los recursos que las mismas turberas generan. Y este es el caso de una iniciativa que venimos impulsando con apoyo de una corporación privada, de un AGE, que es una corporación que tiene presencia en 20 países del mundo, es una empresa productora de bebidas que está trabajando muy de cerca con nuestro servicio de áreas protegidas, con las comunidades que viven en la zona de amortiguamiento de la Reserva Nacional Pacaya-Samiria, y que están aprovechando un fruto de palmera, un fruto de uso tradicional que proviene de un área protegida y que está permitiendo generar un producto que ha elevado el nivel de ingreso de las poblaciones locales, ha permitido hacer una estabilización del precio que tenía este producto o este fruto a lo largo del año, y ha permitido una alianza de trabajo entre Estado, comunidades locales y el sector privado y organizaciones de sociedad civil, todos en un mismo objetivo: cómo demostrar que las áreas protegidas son tierra productiva, no son tierra ociosa, son tierra en la cual se produce de forma sostenible para generar y abastecer mercados. Aquí está un poco más de información sobre el impacto sobre la zona de intervención. Es un poco el modelo que estamos impulsando para todas nuestras áreas protegidas, y especialmente para nuestras áreas protegidas que tienen turberas, en las cuales la importancia de estos bienes y servicios que se generan es claramente evidente, ¿no? O sea, es más clara tal vez que en otros tipos de áreas protegidas que tenemos en el país. ¿Cuál es el modelo que estamos promoviendo desde el país? La conservación y puesta en valor de los humedales en general y las turberas dentro de las áreas protegidas, dentro de los sitios Ramsar y en general como ecosistemas de importancia para la provisión de servicios ecosistémicos, de contribuciones de la naturaleza. El reconocimiento de estos servicios a través de los pagos por servicios ecosistémicos, lo que llamamos nosotros mecanismos de retribución, en la recuperación de las turberas que se han perdido, sobre todo en la zona andina, donde hemos tenido procesos de degradación, procesos de pérdida por uso intensivo, y finalmente lo que señalaba al principio, la identificación de las zonas de turbera para ver dónde están y qué es lo que necesitamos trabajar de manera más profunda. Muchas gracias a todos por su atención y disculpen si me tomé más del tiempo debido. Gracias.
No, thank you so much. Extraordinary way to close out this phenomenal session. We had received many very good questions, and while we don't have time to go back to the speakers to have them answer it now, we will provide information on these responses to these questions in the app, in the WhatsApp app that you can find after this session. Really great questions about wanting to know the difference between carbon sequestration in peatlands compared to other very intensive ecosystems like forest land and mangroves. Questions about how you ensure conservation in the light of pressures for deforestation due to oil palm. Ideas about how there can be more collaboration, for example, between the Republic of Congo and Indonesia. And then also more about things like what maps currently exist for peatland carbon that on storage that could exist. And what are some of the perspectives of local community in terms of the opportunities around peatlands? I just want to thank the speakers for such valuable contributions. We started out by understanding how important these ecosystems are, how beautiful they are, and also what the incredible services that they provide for humanity in terms of health, in terms of biodiversity, in terms of climate. We heard them described as the perfect system because of what they're capable of doing, both for resilience for communities and flood protection and water stability, but also the magnitude, incredible magnitude of the examples from Peru and Argentina about the mitigation potential. We've heard very positive examples. We heard national actions as well as scientific information that is there to be the foundation for future actions, the need for more actions, the need for local buy-in, and how important it is to connect this to livelihoods, in addition to the high-level buy-in, to really ensure that we have a full understanding of the historic connections to cultures and to human well-being. And I would say that was one of the real themes we heard from multiple speakers, was about the connectivity. Since the first compelling information that we heard from the CMS Executive Secretary about connecting ecosystems, but also connecting people. Thank you so much for all the contributions and for participating in this wonderful journey around the world on the importance of peatlands, and we look forward to connecting with you more, including Wild for Life on the Peatlands journey. Thank you.